I do love me some dark murder mysteries, and so many great ones come from Norway, Denmark, and in this most recent outing, Sweden. Blood Sacrifice has some seriously twisted mechanics at play, but do they all fit together? A Stockholm detective and his estranged ex-cop father are forced into an uneasy alliance to hunt down a brutal serial killer before they strike again in exactly 1 week's time. The series is from the creator of the other Netflix series Lupin and Apple TV's Hijack. So, twisty or intense mysteries, they're his thing. Here, we follow lead investigator Thomas as he and his team try to find the serial killer. When Thomas begins to have a hunch, he reaches out to his dad, and even though they have this strange relationship, the ex-detective agrees to help out his son on this case. The only other detail I'm going to give you about the plot is that the murders happen at an exact time each time, putting the pressure then on the cops to solve it before more victims are killed. Now, for the story portions, I'm going to be very vague because there are twists and red herrings that are included that can very easily be spoiled just by poor word choices. This is a 5-episode series with them each being about 55-ish minutes. So, it is a fast binge, and given the intensity of the crimes and then the urgency of the deadline that the cops are under, the pacing for this makes it nearly impossible to not to want to keep watching. Now, thankfully, the storytelling and the presentation, those aren't rushed. The writing allows for character to sit expectantly, waiting on an action or maybe a decision that they're not sure is even going to happen. The patience to show Thomas and the others just standing and observing, typically without any dialogue, and only looks, that could be risky. It could create dips in the momentum, but because we can observe the team bubbling with this nervous energy as they quietly watch people, the intensity is maintained despite the lack of action or pursuit. The characters in this are all sort of moody, and many times we're not exactly sure why. There's a pressure to solve the crime, which has put everybody, not just the public, on edge. But for many of the relationships that were shown, it felt as though this was a second season with the characters. And because I hadn't seen the first, I was missing all sorts of context and relational cues that pointed to the strained emotions. It's not like I couldn't understand the character interactions, but it really seemed as though there was more background just under the surface that hadn't been presented. As an example, Thomas and one of the detectives on his team is his best friend. But from the start, there's this bit of animosity present. Now, some of it can be explained by a decision that Thomas made, which then affects Max. But it appears deeper than that, almost like there was some sort of betrayal that we weren't witness to. There are several of these instances between the characters, not enough to keep me from being invested in the intrigue or concern for the characters. But that connection would have been stronger had I not felt as though I came in after all the discussions and development had already been provided. Aside from that issue, though, the show utilizes some savage acts to build out the crimes. At first, we're not shown the aftermath of a scene other than just to see the blood spurts on the wall, floor, and ceilings. This works to create this dreadful image despite not fully knowing what happened to victims. But then, to either quell our imaginations or to horrify us even more, we get to see the victims. And it's not every day that a series delves into this sort of barbarity, but it is effective and memorable. And once we know what happens to the victims, the anxiety and the stress kicks up a bunch, especially as the days of the week are splashed across the screen to show us how time is ticking down until the next attack. Now, something else that complements the uniqueness of the crimes is the way that the victims are lured to their fates. I don't remember ever seeing this mechanism utilized before, weaving in a sadistic cunning that made me applaud the ingenuity, but shocked at the cruelty. Now, from a mystery standpoint, this one introduced enough sketchy-looking people, or at least individuals who acted cagey or sus, so I couldn't land on anyone specific with certain. I do think the series cheats just a bit with the rules of detective fiction, adding a level of complexity to figuring out the reveal. Now I'm not going to say which rules are hedging towards being broken, but they aren't enough to create something implausible or unimaginable. While the series is intriguing with its mystery, the writing also includes several opportunities to examine moral dilemmas, creating a central theme to the story about what the right thing to do is and whether the wrong thing can be the right thing if the desired outcome is beneficial. Story weave these ideas throughout several relationships and interactions, most of them involving Thomas, which then compounds the effect of the dilemmas without ever bludgeoning us with those concepts. And the subtlety is wonderful as it continually reinforces the storytelling without overtaking the dark urgency that's encompassing the characters. This is a strong entry in the murder mystery category. Not only do we have a creative and ruthless perpetrator, but the dynamics at play within the investigation create obstacles that add to the tension while incorporating several moral quandaries that complicate relationships and the case as a whole. Some relationships don't get the background they deserve to fully inform us of the context that exists between characters. But thanks to pressure from the impending crimes and the inclusion of effective red herrings, the series creates an indelible story that holds some surprises and shocks that you probably just won't expect. There's no sex or nudity, a lot of profanity, and then some atrocious violence. I give Blood Sacrifice 4 out of 5 couches. Have you watched this yet? I'm really curious to know what you thought about the mystery. Let me know in the comments below.